motion. DeAnthony Thomas, he goes the other way and takes the handoff with a couple of blockers. He's in, touchdown.
Tell you what, this is great mobility by Alex Smith. This is poor defense, though. You see the huge void. When you're playing good team defense, there shouldn't be that kind of void, and you should never get outrun by a quarterback like the Lions defense just did. This defense is strong up front. The linebacker and back end have been struggling mightily, and we're starting to see it.
All receivers out. Smith in trouble. Takes off again. 10, 5, touchdown. Chiefs running it again.
All right, so let's start this week's rundown. Lions fall to 1-7. In the in-house predictions, Fano takes the lead.
The smartest man alive.
Calm down, Fano. Martin Mayo proclaims at 1-6 the Lions are buyers at the deadline.
He's the smartest man alive.
Let's fast forward 24 hours after the deadline. Fano, how many trades we got?
Not one. Not one.
So where do we start this week? We're 1-7, another loss.
Yeah, the London unbeaten streak stops at 1, if you could call that a streak.
I thought
it's a very lion-like streak, so I take pride in my any single win I could get, or any sort of like positive stat I could take from something I tried to. So 50% in London. But, yeah, I don't know.
I really thought at halftime, we were just spotting them in the lead and we were trying to do our London comeback, but unfortunately, that did not happen.
Yeah, we're not the Buffalo Bills, apparently.
It's definitely very tough to be a Lions fan right now.
We had to wake up early for it, too. It was
we
awful.
did have to wake up really early to watch that, and a lot of people woke up really early and just, it started good. We started with 3 points. It was, you're like, oh, Lions moved down the field.
And I love Matt Prater. Every time it comes out, it's like the most hilarious little run onto the field for a guy who looks like he's still drunk.
Yeah, Matt Prater's pretty solid, though. He's definitely got a lot of heart out there. I don't know, it's hilarious to watch him. What'd you think, Mike?
Of Prater specifically?
No, Casey. I love talking Prater, though.
Yeah, so if we could do a whole show on Prater, I'm sure, eventually. Maybe we could look at that for the bye week. But, I don't know. What'd you think of the game? You see any bright spots? Is there really anything to say about it?
I mean, it's hard to take any positives away. I mean, there's individual players, the whole year, that continue to play well, that you could feel like maybe you have bright spots and people to build around and all these great things, but it was an awful performance that they should be embarrassed for.
You say bright spots, so I guess I can kind of lead us into something that I wanted to talk about. So Sports Illustrated, being the oldest end-all be-all of sports stories, came out with their mid-season, what you would say, the most overrated team.
Or team.
It was a team, actually. Yeah, they came up with the most overrated team, and the Lions, a few Lions, made the team. I don't know if you guys want to guess potentially who might have been a couple of Lions that might have made the team, and then I'll run through the actual guys that made the team.
It's got to be, one has to be Stafford, because, I mean, it just has to be.
Yeah, I guess for obvious reasons.
Maybe Darius Slay. I would say probably another one. Was he on there?
Mike,
It's got to be all offense, I would think.
All offense? No.
Sure.
Slay could be on there. He tripped Peyton Manning.
So I can't guess, but yeah, Fano, you're right. Matt Stafford made the list as the starting QB of the mid-season most overrated team. At running back, DeMarco Murray. Wide receivers, they had Demaryius Thomas and T.Y. Hilton. At tight end, taking over from last year's big winner of Eric Ebron, being the most overrated tight end of the year last year.
Oh, he's stepping his game up?
Is Julius Thomas. So he's coming in. Right. And in terms of Detroit Lions, the offensive line made it, and the head coach of
Caldwell made it?
Of the most
I didn't even think they dwelled into
Jim Caldwell.
I didn't even think they were going to dwell into coaches.
They didn't consult USA Today for that then, because he wasn't overrated in that poll a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel
what were the cornerbacks then?
The cornerbacks were
because Darius Slay's had such a.
Let me see. I'm actually going to pull it up for you. I got it here.
Because Darius Slay has had such a spotlight Sean on him, like in prime time against Peyton, talking about how he's gonna
I'm surprised that there was no defensive
and getting
guys.
burned
It's
multiple
'cause
times in the
nobody-
game.
Nobody knows any of the defense on Detroit. There's like 3 players that the rest of the league knows.
Byron
No,
Maxwell and
Oh,
Brandon
actually,
Flowers of the Chargers both made the list.
When
at
Maxwell
cornerback.
was signed as Philadelphia's number 1, I like messaged Mady and I'm like, I've watched this guy play many games. He's one of the worst cornerbacks I've ever seen.
Hey man,
And he's their number 1. He was like their big cornerback signing of the offseason. So
and,
good for them. But
I'll go through the other guys at defense since you stumped me there because I didn't have it written down. But at safety, Deshaun Goldson
that's all
of
right.
the Redskins and Michael Griffin of the Titans. And I guess when you're looking at linebackers, Levante David of the Buccaneers and Chad Greenway of the Vikings.
Greenway, really?
I know. I thought that Greenway was
He's
in
great.
the games that I've seen. Obviously,
He's
mostly
not the
the
best,
games
but-
against the Lions. But yeah,
Right.
I wouldn't say that he's somewhat overrated.
Well,
But yeah,
The thing that's in common with that list, except for Greenway and Thomas, is I specifically mean Denarius Thomas, is that all those teams are losing teams, and that's what fuels the list. These guys aren't watching these guys play; they have no idea what they're talking about. Whoever made that list, it's just
oh no, I think it's more so a conversation
Teams
piece, and
lose
that's why I
that,
try to say Sports
Minnesota's
Illustrated
not.
is definitely not the end all be
what's
all.
Minnesota's
of,
record? They're like 5-3.
the 5-2. But that's
5-2?
that's what I'm saying is that outside of him, Greenway and Thomas, all those other teams are losing teams.
This is a poll by Sports Illustrated's Doug Farrar. Okay, he's very very high prestigious guy. It's it's not Peter King.
We'll leave.
No Peter King.
We'll leave him
but
alone.
We
We'll
will-
allow for our. He's
will-
got us talking. So.
We will leave him alone. He
He's
definitely
done
has
his
got
due
us talking,
diligence there, so.
and he's got us into what I feel like.
Hey, you know what? Maybe couldn't name drop that USA Today writer. I bet
He definitely couldn't. And the only reason I name dropped it is because I got the computer in front of me and I took a look at Doug Farrar and his picture.
it's a solid name for our.
It's a definite solid picture. So let's flip this around then. Let's look at bright spots, like Mike said. Mike said,
Let's sustain it up right now.
Yeah, you know what? Let's go like half full. Glass half full. I'm a glass half empty type of guy.
It's always
if anybody
full, baby.
who's listening knows me.
It's always full, even when it's empty. There's air in there.
There's
It's always full, baby.
it's always full, and that air is probably
Even
Kool-Aid.
when you're 1-6,
It's-
there's always next season.
There definitely is
What about
always
when you're
a bright spot.
1-7?
Well, when you're 1-7, I don't know
Next
why I
season's
keep
still
doing
going to
that.
come, most likely, unless you're the Chargers. It might not come. You never know. But
It's because it wasn't on U.S. soil. I'm not going to count.
so let's look at bright spots. I know there's got to be some bright spots on the team. I'm trying to think of 3 guys. Let's toss out 3 guys
Before we
and see
started,
if we agree on anything.
Yeah.
Before we started, we made a list. We
Made
said
our
okay,
list.
3 guys each. Toss it out. We might have overlaps. We might not.
let's go one at a time.
Sure.
So we'll start with Mady. Who you got, buddy? Who's your boy?
As a bright spot,
It's a bright spot.
uh,
One player.
specifically, I mean, Calvin Johnson has been a bright spot. He's played well this year.
Should we do? Are we doing? Well, let's get into that later. But
Yeah.
let's start with. I guess we shouldn't say bright spot because these players aren't necessarily bright spots. But
Yeah, let's. I
the
guess
underrated bunch.
We could go underrated, underachievers, but they're not underachievers because we kind of feel like they're the bright
Underappreciated.
spot again.
They're
but
bright spots. They're bright
underappreciated,
spots for
yes.
us nerds when we're
Yes.
like, oh, but don't worry about this. We have our third running back.
George Wynn.
Yeah,
is a
like,
powerhouse.
who-
He did not make my list.
Who? Anyway, let's
So,
go with your.
Mike, who are your underappreciated Detroit Lion players?
I think the most underappreciated Lion is Rasheem Mathis. I mean, he's not a shutdown corner by any stretch of the imagination, but it's like every time someone gets behind him and beats him, everyone's so angry at him. But you play cornerback in the NFL, it's going to happen, and he's usually on the edge making the tackles. His guys aren't breaking tackles often on him. He plays his position well. He knows what his role is, and I think that the Lions are a better team when he's on the field.
We tend to talk about him kind of a lot on the podcast, and I think that he's the type of guy that you're probably you want to find. I think if you're a GM, you want to find him in the offseason to make your playoff team a little bit more intelligent.
He's been in the league for 12 years, and he's an older guy.
Yeah.
And definitely, you know what I mean? Like, everybody loses a little bit of a step, but he's fantastic out there. He's definitely a good player to have.
If he had a speed still, he'd be the Pro Bowl player that he used to be,
Yeah.
but that's the only difference now.
No doubt.
All right, I'll go next. I'm gonna say my guy. I love the defensive lineman, so I'll go with Jason Jones, a guy who in the Seattle game kind of got embarrassed a bit. He missed quite a few tackles, and the athleticism of Russell Wilson kind of made him look like a goof. But a guy who can actually put some moves on a tackle, plays a little bit inside if you need him to. Pretty good rusher, just kind of missing the finish. Another guy who's a little bit older, but I don't know. I like him.
Yeah, I agree. He's versatile, and that helps. I think that he's not been great as a run defender. He's been good as a run defender inside.
But
I think
he would be better outside because you're getting blocked by a tackle, and that's what you're used to.
I think he's not as fast as some of the more athletic defensive ends, and I think that's what hurts him. But he's been a good pass rusher. He's got size. I mean, Jason Jones is a good player, and I think that he has been underappreciated this year for sure.
Yeah. All right. So I guess I'll go next, and I'm going to say Lance Moore. I think that as a third wide receiver, he's stepped up. He's been pretty solid. He's eclipsed his numbers from last year. He's got 3 TDs, and I kind of see him as a leader on the offense. Whereas there's certain guys that are out there, and you want them to be your leaders, but they're not really the leaders. And I feel like his experience with winning Super Bowl in New Orleans, he's a solid guy. I think he's having a solid year, and it was a great acquisition.
We've had a lot of trouble actually trying to find kind of a deep depth at wide receiver, someone who could actually come in, and we had Fuller for a long time.
Yeah, like, and I think Fuller's just not being used this year. I like Corey
He's
Fuller.
all right.
I feel like Lance Moore.
But you can see Lance
Moore stepped up, and yeah, he's an upgrade on him, and he's not relinquishing that spot, and I think it's nice to see.
If Lance Moore and Corey Fuller could merge together, they'd be a pretty good wide receiver.
Yeah. All right, who's
your second guy?
Next one?
My second guy, I would say, I'll go a little bit off the grid, and I'll say Michael Burton, which is funny for me to say because I don't love fullbacks.
The singer?
But
he goes by Mike.
Mike Burton.
Mike Burton.
I think that he's been a good fullback. I mean, you could see he sometimes in the run game they'll assign him to block an interior defensive lineman, or they'll put him in tough spots, and he's good at doing that. Again, I hate.
I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised by this pick because you have a real love for this power game offense that we have. And Michael Burton is one of the leaders
you don't like
on that.
You don't like fullbacks at all, and it is kind of you're the type of guy who's like, oh, your tight end can block. Oh,
I agree.
Unfortunately, we don't have a tight end that can block right now. That stays healthy.
Even if you put Ebron back there,
Well, Burton's
way better
blocker than Ebron.
But from what I know about Mike, you're the type of guy who's like, you got a tight end who can somewhat block on the roster. He's sitting there. He's sitting in the backfield.
I'm just answering the question. I think that people don't give Burton the credit he deserves. I think he's played well whenever he's been on the field. If I was the offensive coordinator, we wouldn't have a fullback on the roster.
Yeah, and if I was, we definitely would. And Burton is definitely not the type of guy you want to let go. He's got a ton of heart. Plays rough too.
Special teams too.
Yeah, special teams, making tackles.
Yeah, those are the things that people don't really see. They don't really take account.
Yeah,
a lot of times, the regular football fan just kind of looks for stats.
That's how the majority of guys in the league get jobs. Is being good on special teams, and it's something that, like, guess what? If your offense and your defense are playing well, and your special teams allows a touchdown, you're going back to the locker room, or you're headed back to the sidelines, just kicking yourself because you've done something that the 31 other teams have easily done, and special teams makes a difference sometimes.
Oh, no doubt. So who's your second guy, Connor?
My second guy, I forgot. I think I said Bynes, didn't I?
No, you're stealing my guy. Don't steal my
guy. I won't steal your guy.
That's my next guy, so we'll get to
But I like Bynes, so I think I picked...
You could pick Bynes.
I picked the guy who maybe would want to put in the backfield.
I wanted to lead you right into it. Yeah.
Pettigrew, yeah.
Brandon
Pettigrew, I think we had to have him injured to really understand his importance this year.
And definitely appreciate him, I think.
And the offensive line was put even more of a... Like, we've lined up Lucas just because he's the only one even close to Pettigrew being blocked. We're missing Foria like crazy because Pettigrew is our only tight end who can block, and he's a great blocker at tight end. Doesn't have the hands, obviously we all know that, but...
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate the fact that we've just had such a small sample size of him. He's only played 3 games, and in those 3 games, how many full quarters did he play out of those games? Which is unfortunate. Yeah, exactly, and it's hard to see it.
We're missing him big time.
Everybody looks at his hands, and they don't look at the fact that he is like an essential blocker to this team.
He's a good football player. I don't know that he's an elite blocking tight end, but he gets the job done. He was the key block on the biggest run of the year the Lions had, Joique Bell's first run.
And I think a key, like one of the things we don't talk about that much, and we have a lot of history of guys who, and another one right now at that same position who are kind of goofballs, who personalities kind of a little bit ugly, might cause problems in the locker room, will give headlines. Pettigrew's a quiet guy.
Yeah.
He's a
The
very
type of
quiet
guy you would want on your team too. I think that helps with his underratedness.
His teammates like him. This is tough to say because he's coming off of a few missed games, but he's the type of guy that plays through all the injuries that he has. Again, this year maybe is a bit of a deviation, but I've seen him after games be in pretty rough shape, and he powers through it.
Yeah, and you look at it, they gave him a 4-year deal, and everybody kind of was up in arms. And it's why would you sign this guy? And it's I feel like if you actually take a deeper look, you see how important this guy is to this team, how important he is to this offense.
I agree.
Okay, so you've stolen mine, and the secret's out. Josh Bynes. I think that Josh Bynes stepped up last year. And this year he's stepping up even more, and I think he's having a great season. He's a fantastic addition to the linebacking core.
I think it was week 1 or week 2 on the pod we were talking. Well, I said specifically he didn't look like he could fill Levy's shoes, and the next 3 weeks he had a string of weeks where he was, especially in Minnesota, he would stop AP or was it Rudolph on the goal line? He was making big tackle after big tackle and playing really well positionally too. And a guy I think that either between him and Whitehead, if we have to, next year, if Tulloch's getting up there, I mean, he's a little bit long in the tooth. I think that maybe...
And he's right behind Tulloch in tackle.
If we have to have... If you're telling me right now that next season we have to go in with Levy at Sam, Bynes at Mike, and then Whitehead at Will, I'm okay with that.
You would flip Whitehead and
yeah,
and
probably.
Levy. But
Whitehead would probably You don't think Whitehead would be in the middle? I think it would be between Bynes and Whitehead to be in the middle,
and Levy would be weak side.
Yeah. Okay.
But I agree. I think that I think that the best 2 linebackers this year for the Lions have easily been Whitehead and Bynes.
Levy's been out, obviously.
Well, I mean,
we don't have to really mention that, but yeah.
That's why he. So, and the thing is,
but specifically that if we have to go into next season with those 3, I'm actually okay with that. I'm really okay with that. I'm feeling good.
Well, if a healthy Levy makes a huge difference. They don't have a great coverage linebacker, and that's their issue. Tulloch is getting abused in coverage this year, and I think that that's a problem, and you'll probably see him not back next year because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mike, your last guy.
My last guy, I'm gonna say underappreciated. I can go a couple different ways because I think that there's a lot of Lions that are a bit underappreciated. I'll give honorable mention to Darius Slay because I think that he gets hated on too much, but people don't realize how good he is. But I'll say Eric Ebron just because I might strike a chord with people. But
this will be.
Eric Ebron does not deserve the hate that he gets. He's a good player. I understand that he didn't have a productive rookie season. No tight end in the world will ever have. You just don't have productive seasons as a rookie.
I think when we look back at it, he had one of the most productive tight end rookie seasons of all time.
He was actually, again, back to this list that doesn't really matter, but last year he was the most overrated tight end,
which is ridiculous for a rookie.
It is pretty.
When I did see that, I was kind of surprised. But I thought that it was this year, then I look back, I was like, wait. That was 2014.
The only thing I could say about that is because he was such a high draft pick, and
exactly
the Lions. You could say that they went off the board of what they should have drafted and drafted him, knowing that they had tight ends and they didn't really need to.
I agree.
I think that probably got him that. Well, I mean, I'm sure that's what got him that spot last year.
When you assess someone's play and their value to a team, you can't talk about where they were drafted, who they were drafted over, any of that stuff.
I think this is just a media looking at personality type of thing. Because I remember the first week, after they drafted him, one of the first things she said, he was Optimus Prime. He's I think his personality is just the biggest thing that gets all the hate for him.
There wouldn't be an offensive coordinator in the league that wouldn't love to have Eric Ebron on their team. Maybe not give a top 10 pick for him, but I mean, now if he was available,
there might be a couple guys who wouldn't trade their top tight ends for him. But
I totally understand what you're saying. I've said it many times before. I don't like his attitude, But I do see a progression, you know what I mean, from last year to this year, and he potentially could be a valuable part of this offense. I just wish that he had a different attitude. That's my biggest problem.
And I think the
now with him.
majority of fans wish that he played a different position and he was a different position player that we
His name
drafted.
is Aaron Donald or Odell Beckham.
Yeah.
That's
And
not his
you're
fault.
never. I know you're never going to get away from that stigma.
No.
I think, but you kind of got to look at it this way: we have him now, and we want to try and make him the best, tight end that he can be. And I want him to be the best person he can be. And I don't feel like he's the best person right now. But that's off topic.
He'll never be an inline blocker, but he gets open if he can, tidy up the hands a bit, which are better this year than they were last
They
year.
definitely are better than they were last year.
I mean, he's an offensive weapon for your football team for sure, and he might be the most dangerous one on offense at a pass catching position 2 years from now, unless the Lions acquire like another elite receiver or something like that.
Yeah. And my third, we won't spend too much time on this
Yeah.
because we talked about Bynes a little bit, but I said Whitehead too.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned.
And everything we mentioned before, it's just like we've talked about it, and it's like when we were talking about who would be part of the crew, what guy would you want to have your back if you're entering a dark alley? And it used to be Ndamukong Suh, and we were kind of looking through the team. It's like, oh, who would it be? And we were kind of like, you know what? Tahir Whitehead, this guy lays some licks on guys. I don't know. He's a pretty tough dude, but I mean, he might be our starting middle linebacker next
yeah,
year.
he
So
potentially could
He was
be.
a starting middle linebacker last year, and
Yep.
so I mean, with the right players around him, he could be. He's not like a great player, but he's a contributing player. And one of the things that confuses me the most this year is why Whitehead and Travis Lewis are kind of splitting time. I don't get that.
yeah, I feel like it should be Whitehead earned it last year. I think.
He's played well. I understand that Lewis gives you a bit more coverage, but whatever. I still think you're better with Whitehead on the field.
Okay, so I'll get to my last guy. I don't know if he's underappreciated anymore because I feel like a lot of people are seeing how appreciated he is at the running back position. I picked Theo Riddick. I think we started to see how potentially valuable Theo Riddick was at the end of last year, and now you see him at the end of the games. He's the guy that they're giving the ball to. He doesn't have a lot of carries. We did kind of see him carry the ball a little bit this past week, but he's a force in the passing game.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. I don't know. I really, really have developed a love for Theo Riddick.
He's
And-
he's like the perfect spread running back.
Yeah.
A guy most teams try and figure out what type of guy they can get, like a Dexter McCluster or something like that, someone that can line out there, and they usually just look so uncomfortable. But Riddick, time and time again, he makes one hand that we talking about, like Odell Beckham Jr.
Exactly.
making one-handed catches, he does too.
Yeah.
And big times and big moments in games too. He has big moments for us at times. So.
I agree. He doesn't have breakaway speed, and he doesn't have the running out of the backfield type of vision that you'd want. He doesn't hit the hole well sometimes, but excellent receiver, as good as you can get as a receiver out of the backfield. I mean, he would be disgustingly good in New England.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. There are a few places that would utilize someone like him perfectly, and he's such a New England type of guy.
And my favorite thing about Theo Riddick is you'll watch him lay a guy out on a punt, or do the Lions are getting the ball back, do some great coverage things, and then just run right out next to Stafford out of the shotgun, catch a pass, run blocks on one. Just he's a good football player.
Yeah, like Abdullah will knee down or fair catch it, and he's on the sidelines. Theo
Yeah.
Riddick's trotting out.
No, exactly. All right, so let's go MVP, offense, and defense. Obvious MVP, offense, defense. Let's start with defense. Who's your defensive MVP?
I mean, it's easily Ansa. It has to be.
Yeah,
I mean,
are we in agreement? Or Fawny, you look like you don't think so.
I don't think it would be so easily.
it is.
Easily answer. I think easily because his position is more important. But I think if Glover Quinn's not on this team, man.
Glover Quinn has been limited because of the defensive line hasn't been there, so
Yeah,
he hasn't been
100%.
able to play the free safety.
I'm going
role
to
he
say,
played last year.
can I say not a player? I'm going to say Austin. Because he's the only one that's been able to use the little tools in that toolbox he has to even, and probably it sucks to kind of,
Appreciate
it sucks,
that, yeah,
it sucks
for
to me to try and say that this week because it's one of the worst losses in Lions history, I think. Wasn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely pretty bad. It's
A
one
lot
of
of
the
points
biggest losses in a
against.
while.
So, But I think that him potentially
I don't know.
this team could be worse, much worse if it wasn't for him. But if we're going,
I don't know if that's true.
Yeah,
can't get enough.
I'm gonna stick with the agreeing with Mike, and I really think that Ziggy Ansah is key to that defensive line.
Yeah.
I think that he's like,
from a
I
player
wanna
perspective, it's
see
definitely
him
Ansah.
years upon years that guy playing.
He's going to be the only defensive lineman they don't let walk in free agency, probably. So
Exactly.
it's only because they won't have a choice in this case.
No, for sure. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, what did you want to say?
No, it's okay.
No, you want
I
to
just
say? I
feel
know.
bad.
We kind of just cut you. You cut you off.
No. Player wise,
Player.
if we have to choose a player, it's obviously Ansah. But I just think I will say honorable mention then. I think to Austin, especially with the Minnesota game. The Minnesota game,
I feel like
impressed
you're
me
going
so
to be
much.
hard pressed for people to agree with you.
I don't
No,
know,
it's
man.
alright. You don't have to agree.
I get that he's been dealt a more difficult hand this year, but
The Minnesota game is what got me. When I watched that, I was like, no,
I don't know.
this guy's good.
like the thing is, they have to blitz more, it puts their cornerbacks in islands more, it like puts them out of their strength. But at the same time, like you can't fall from. I don't care. You've really only lost 2 players, and you fall from second in the league to
Well, not 2. A lot more than 2.
2 starters. That's really it. You
Not really.
Yeah, that's it.
You're losing, especially at the defensive tackle. Especially at the defensive tackle position, you have like 4 guys.
You lost Sue and you lost Fairley, and I mean Mosley, I guess, but
Mosley's
Mosley
huge.
is not.
Well, and he
Mosley
doesn't
is
have,
a
and he
huge
doesn't have
player.
Levy to swish wash back to Fauno's side now. He doesn't have Levy as well.
I think
either.
that's one of the 2 starters
But-
you were counting. If I had to guess.
I was counting Fairley. He
Oh
lost,
well, then
he lost
that
Levy too.
I
Levy's
thought
a huge.
I thought you were talking about Levy too.
He's got a disadvantage, but I mean,
You lose 2 Pro Bowl players. I don't know that there's a team in the league where you lose 2 Pro Bowl players and you're not a shell of what you once were the next season. Take two Pro Bowl players. Take away Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman from the Seahawks. You took away one of them this year, and they struggled on defense.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that personally, Levy is one of the best linebackers in the league.
he is. I agree.
Sue might be the best defensive tackle in the league, and then you got Fairley's like, he's good, but he's not.
Yeah, he's middle of the road.
But I would say just the 2 Pro Bowlers.
I
But
think you can sympathize with the difficult situation Austin's in, but I mean, you can't pat him on the back for the job he's done either.
I'll give him. I don't know, man. I was impressed by the Minnesota game, but
All right, let's
switch it over.
Let's move on to our offensive MVP. Maybe we'll get back and touch a little bit on Terrell Austin. I might have a question at the end there. Who's our offensive MVP?
It's
Megatron.
Kelvin.
It's Megatron.
It's not even.
He may not be Megatron anymore, according to some people, but he's definitely a solid player, and he's definitely the MVP. of
He's played better in
this team on
offense.
offense.
Yeah.
So now that we're talking about Calvin Johnson, let's talk about the fact that a lot of people have talked and said that trade deadline coming, Calvin Johnson should be traded. We heard all these, they weren't even really rumors. They were just speculation from writers saying this is what would be, positive for Detroit. Yeah. This is what they should do. And it was nice to see him come out. I know, Fano, you sent me, the article, and I heard it actually before that he came out and he said, this is where I want to win. I want to bring a winning culture. I don't want to leave here. Mm-hmm. What does that make you guys feel? I know for me, it made me feel like I already loved him before, but I just love him that much more, and I don't want to see him go. Like, I want him to retire here. What do you guys think?
You talk about being torn. I feel more torn than Rachel McAdams in The Notebook.
Ooh.
Who do I choose? The money, the vast amounts of money that we have to spend for him, and potentially the draft picks we get back for him, or just a beautiful man. He's such a beautiful human being. I think he's such a great person.
He really is. Like, I know you get to talk to these guys all the time, and it's more in a business relationship, but you kind of can see them joking around. You're in the locker room, you get to see that. I got to go to training camp. I got to just say hello to Calvin Johnson, just see how he interacted with fans, and I was like, that was the best thing for me ever. And you guys know I was like, oh my god, I got to meet Megatron. Mike talks to him all the time.
Yeah,
it's fine, but I know how I feel. How do you feel? I know deep down you're a fan no matter what.
He's a great person. I mean, he is. Not to say that the reason why that's true is because he's no hassle. He's himself. he's not like the superstar type person. Like he goes to the podium. Like, the big players always go to the podium. You don't talk to them at their locker.
Yeah.
But like he'll stop and talk to you for a second, even though he's the big player that you don't do that for. So props to him. He's a great player. He's a great person. I would trade him in a second for a first-round draft pick. I wouldn't even think about it.
It's very cold-hearted. Cold blood.
It's the right move to do. If you
It
get
is,
a first
and you
round,
know what? I think deep down we all know that
It is.
if the opportunity arose, it's probably the right thing to do because he's so expensive and it's just so hard to.
his best years are behind. Even though he's playing good, his
His
best years are definitely behind him.
It is the right thing to do, and I feel like we all kind of pull the swerve on everybody by our feelings, but those are our feelings for him. But I think that's the biggest.
If you want to be a winning NFL team, you have to be a little bit more like. I think there are ways, but not necessarily. There are ways to cut ties, but also have still good relationships with the player you're cutting ties with.
If Calvin Johnson got traded to New England, I don't think he'd be too pissed about it. And at the same time, too, if you were in a position to challenge for the playoffs, you do not trade him. But you're 1-7. You trade him if you.
I don't want to talk for what Calvin Johnson would or wouldn't think, but I know that there are a few things that are true. He wants to stay in Detroit. He wants to win. I don't know if those things are mutually exclusive or not. And you might be right. Like if he went to New England, he gets one of those maybe.
Yeah.
But
I totally agree with you in the fact that the mentality of wanting to keep him because you love him so much is not the right mentality.
No.
As an organization or as a fan,
unless it
you should look at it as if it makes sense.
It makes sense on the books, but it doesn't make sense on the books.
And that's the problem where it's like all side swerve. Like you look at like baseball, Miguel Cabrera got that huge deal. He's going to be a Detroit Tiger until he's almost 40 years old. There's no salary cap, so it doesn't have no real implication. It has implications in their budget, but there's no salary cap. He got paid for what he did.
He could
You know
could
what I mean?
always
He is the
restructure,
greatest.
and we have to hope that he does restructure.
You could hope that Calvin would, but he's probably not going.
It kind of kills your team to have such a heavy pay for even prime Calvin Johnson to pay that much is still a lot to be paying for the wide receiver position, but a guy who's kind of on the downslope of his career, seemingly, like you guys are saying, he's not Megatron anymore.
He's good. Like,
he's
he
really
definitely
good.
is good.
He's
He
the
is
best
really
player
good,
on
yeah.
the field most games.
Oh, no doubt.
How about on the field, on the Lions side of the field?
That's exactly
That we've played
yeah.
this season, I wouldn't say that there were so many better players than Calvin Johnson. And Denver, yes, there are a bunch of better players. Minnesota, is there a better player on the field?
Maybe at AP at the stage
AP.
of his career. Probably.
No. AP's in the same position. He's getting older. He's starting
It's
to
true.
break down too.
It's
It is
true.
true.
But it's arguable at least.
KC, does Kansas City have a better player than Calvin
I
Johnson?
mean, they have
Alex Smith looked better.
Justin Houston is pretty good.
Justin Houston is actually really good. Maybe offensively, I'll say. But anyway, he's still a star in the league.
It's for
He is,
argument's
I
sake.
agree.
He's still a
definitely
star
is
in the
league. If we have a Pro Bowler this year, he'll be our
There's
Pro
no
Bowler.
fooling us,
That's-
though. We have to try and figure out somehow to make him restructure. We can't move him anymore.
No,
we wouldn't have moved him
the trade
anyway,
deadline's
apparently,
come and
'cause-
gone. So, but we look at it this way: for next season, say we're the general managers right now. What do we do? Do we feel that this team potentially, with a few more pieces,
You know
could
what?
compete
You
next
know
year?
what? I think
or do we blow it up?
You know
And I
what
know
I
a lot of people have said blow it up.
a lot of teams in pro sports don't do this type of stuff because maybe they think they won't get away with it. But if you look at the New England Patriots or like the San Antonio Spurs, they always sign guys or they always have guys in the early parts of their careers for like no money. And then towards the end of their careers, they'll give them money, but they always restructure. The players will always restructure to get more talent on the field. Because you know what? When they retire, guess who can pay them whatever they want because there's no NFL restrictions anymore. The franchise can pay you whatever they want. Like I could go up to Stafford right now or Calvin right now and say, you know what? Why don't you pay for this much less? Then when you retire, I'll take care of you.
Yeah,
but you
I
can't.
don't-
It's
you can't
illegal.
say
You
that.
can't say it.
Yeah, you can't say
but,
that.
But you know that type of stuff is said. Like when Tim Duncan takes a pay cut, you know he's smart
I'm
enough
sure
to
there
get it.
definitely is that stuff is being said, but like in terms of Calvin, what does he have left on his contract? Like a couple
years.
more years. So
Yeah.
how much restructuring can
You
you do?
can't- you
It's
can't-
gonna be
you can't do
backwards.
it.
You're hoping that the next contract is
No,
is
no,
gonna
it
be
was
something
more. It was
that's
more
gonna
of
be
a
more friendly.
It was more of a venting about how the
Yeah.
Lions organization don't have that kind of wink type of
I don't
relationship.
think that happens in football very often.
Maybe not, but Tom Brady restructured a deal a couple years ago.
Yeah, well, but
He took less money, but I think it's up to the player to be smart enough to know that you're going to be with this organization when you're gone. Like, you might have... Well, Tom Brady's a cheater anyway, so they might have actually just talked about it openly. I don't know, over his text. He destroyed his phone, so we'll never know.
So we're at the midway point. We're 1-7. What do you guys think? I asked the question before, and we kind of got off topic. Blow it up, or hope to get a few more pieces for a final run with Stafford and Calvin?
I'll let you go first. I'll let me go first.
I mean, I would need to... The variables here are... what quarterback is available to you in the first round. And I mean, unless you're winning next year, Calvin Johnson is no longer part of your future. I mean, maybe he's, playing a diminished role in a couple years from now, but that's it. So you have some core pieces to build around. There's even the good teams in the league will have significant turnover within a couple years. So I don't think that you go and trade Stafford. And I mean, you have players, you have to keep Stafford. So I mean, what are you going to do? Unless
you keep Stafford past the 2 years that he signed for.
Unless I fall into a good quarterback, you have no choice. You're married to Matthew Stafford unless...
You have a choice, but if you look around the league, it's not a good choice.
But maybe
to play without a kind of proven quarterback.
But maybe they have a shot at an elite rookie coming out or something, and that changes everything a little.
I would have to think within the next 2 years they have to be able to find someone who's
the odds are they're going to have a top 5 pick.
Yeah,
this year.
I just don't know enough about the college quarterbacks.
No, I totally understand that, but are you going to waste a top 5 pick on another quarterback?
If you scout him and think he could be an elite quarterback, absolutely you have to. I mean, you can't. I mean. If you have to scout him and you don't just do it to make a change. But if you look at the guy and you say this guy could be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, you can never pass on that.
So projected quarterback. You watch Michigan State football is Connor Cook.
We've talked a little bit.
Would
about
you draft him though with a top 5 pick? Even though he's not projected, he's projected mid.
If you asked me if I would want Andrew Luck when he was coming out, I would have said no, because I don't think the one thing I would never want to do would be to if we were all putting on the GM hats, the one thing I would never want to do would be to draft a quarterback, because that's
and see you mentioned,
how many great quarterbacks have been busts? How many late round guys are stars now?
But all the good quarterbacks in the league are first round picks, except for a couple of exceptions.
And you mentioned Andrew Luck.
But how many of those first round picks are busts?
Well, look at Andrew Luck from last year. People were talking about him as being
he's got
the best
health issues though. I don't want to.
He does, but also too in the game he's
pretty good though.
He is pretty good too, but he's shown a little regression. The
one thing we are always shown and throughout all one of the biggest things that's hammered in, and we talked about it before, is arm strength. I'm not sure that Connor Cook has a rocket for an arm.
You can't take a quarterback in the top 5 if he doesn't have a strong arm.
And that's just number one. Either has the most ridiculous numbers, or has and another thing about Connor Cook is he doesn't have great career, he's had a good year this year.
Yeah.
He had an okay year last year, but he hasn't had he's not like Peyton Manning.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Michigan
he doesn't
State
have a great long-standing run in college right now, I don't think.
Michigan State plays a pro-style offense. They've played probably the similar style offense that they've played when...
They churn out running backs, good running backs like crazy.
Yeah, when Kirk Cousins was there, though, I feel can you relate Kirk Cousins to Connor Cook? Think of how you felt about Kirk Cousins then.
Well, Kirk Cousins was a bad quarterback even then. He wasn't really a good quarterback at State either, but it's so different. It's like I said, it's one of the things I would never want to do, because if you're drafting Ryan Leaf, everyone's in your ear. Ryan Leaf, he's the best. He's the best quarterback. And you draft him.
You got to know what you're scouting. I mean, that's the
you have to know what you're doing. And I personally wouldn't. Jamarcus Russell.
Bagging your groceries.
But and you know what? Jamarcus Russell could throw hard.
I think a lot
Michael
of people
Vick can throw really hard.
Expected Russell to be he was kind of a controversial.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some players that come out that everyone, Andrew Luck was a slam dunk. Everyone knew.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, so I don't know. It depends on who's available and the scouting. But, if you end up sticking with Stafford, that's not that bad. You can work with Matthew Stafford.
And here's why I let you go first. And I know that we all talk about Mayhew and not being able to pick. He's got himself some draft picks. That's the one thing I could say that he's done well. Is that
the Lions have themselves some draft picks. They might not be his to use.
Might not be his to use. What a shot. Mike Media with the shot. maybe he might be. He's on the hot seat, but he at least got the Lions some draft picks to where that's something that we never did before. We would never ever, have multiple draft. It seemed like under the Millen era we would maybe have one per every round, but we definitely never had more than one every round. It seemed like
Mayu has made a few pretty decent deals. Like he made the Roy Williams trade and got us the 2 picks.
So if we do stick with Stafford over the next 2 years, I would have to think that we can. There's a quarterback out there that we can draft.
So
within the next 2 or 3 years, you got to be able to find one. It seems like
that's the first round pick.
It seems like there's one every year.
But so are you going to invest a first round pick in a quarterback, or are you going to draft a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round, try and develop him behind it, and give Stafford that contract?
If I draft a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round, I'm doing so with the expectation of developing a backup. Yeah. I mean, if he turns out great, good for you, but you can't expect your starting quarterback to just come out of the 3rd round. It's just not realistic. It can't happen. Russell Wilson, whatever, but
Tom Brady
for 5th, yeah. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, you have to kind of strike gold.
Alex Smith.
Alex Smith was first overall.
Yeah.
Was he?
Yes.
Who am I thinking of? Is it Aaron Rodgers?
Aaron Rodgers was still first.
Aaron Rodgers was.
Who's the guy who slipped?
Late 20.
Aaron Rodgers slipped that year.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, okay, so Aaron Rodgers
by the phone and nobody was drafting him.
Aaron Rodgers would be another guy, because he was still in the first round, but he slipped a lot later. So maybe if we can get Cook in the 2nd round, I would maybe take. I would be a little bit more okay.
I don't know too much about.
It seems like he might be a first,
but it looks like he's projected as.
I don't know.
Mid-first rounder.
I don't know that I want him with my first round pick. If that's what you were kind of trying to ask earlier.
Especially too, unless say the Lions, get the top 5 pick, and if it's Mayu or whoever it is, trades down. You know what I mean? Picks up another first round pick at the end of the 1st round, with it, then maybe
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that too.
There's certainly we're talking about it for a reason. Stafford's in this position for a reason. The offensive line, but I think if we fix the offensive line, Stafford is fine. I think you could win with a guy.
I think you have a core. You really do. I mean, you don't need to. It depends. A GM might.
He's good, not great, but I think you can win with a good quarterback. We've seen good quarterbacks win. We've seen some bad quarterbacks win, but having a good quarterback is certainly still kind of a leg up. And if he is good still, we don't know. This is his first real bad year, but if he's still good, we have still a bit of a leg up on a lot of teams in the league.
I agree. You marry him with the right offensive coordinator that adapts to his skills instead of trying to adapt Stafford to their system.
Where's Linehan? Where is he?
And if you do that and you fix the trenches, you're going to be a competitive team again next year. This team can instantly have. I mean, it sounds like an insane thing to say. This team could have a winning record next year if you make the right offseason moves.
And that's the thing with football. I feel like a lot of people don't seem to look at it, but it's like a team could turn around from a terrible.
The Panthers, when they went to the Super Bowl, were last to first, weren't they? Or one of the last.
Exactly, but even look at Oakland this year. Oakland was a bottom feeder last year, and this year
the Cardinals, a few years ago,
they already had their quarterback.
They did already have their, but we already have our quarterback. So you're looking at that too, right? So you look at the Lions are 11-5, now they're 1-7. They might finish. Who knows, 3-13 for all we know, but they could come back out next year and finish.
The Seahawks seem to surge, and the Giants seem to disappear and reappear all the time. So I mean, the bad teams, the NFL is that way. There's big turnover a lot of times, and half the league will be kind of making so many moves that a lot of those teams, like the Lions this year. And we're bad, but we were pretty good last year. We were a playoff team. But now we're the worst team in the league. So, and even in you look at Chicago, they were a Super Bowl team, and then it seemed like a few years later they're in our position. They're trying to fight to blow up they're trying to think of blowing up their franchise, or maybe put in a couple new pieces because Jay Cutler still might be good, and if we might be a few pieces away.
So, what do you think the pieces are that we might need?
You need a right tackle. I mean, you have the worst right tackle play in the league this year.
He's living up to his name. Would you waddling around?
Would you move Riley Reif over to the right side and draft the left tackle?
If the player wasn't the right players there, yeah, absolutely, I would.
You still have hope for Riley Reif? I know a lot of people.
Riley Reif is
writing him off this year, but
he's fine. He's not whatever. You have to accept the player for what he is.
We did that a lot with Jeff Backus too, and there were some years where he was fine.
And now everybody wishes that we had a Jeff Backus style player back.
There were some years that he got beat up pretty badly. He had some bad games, but And it's also a type of thing where sometimes we overreact a lot, and we might be overreacting with Waddle, or this could be Waddle.
No, Waddle's been bad this year.
But he's had an ankle issue, so it's like, is that ankle issue? How big is it? The team doctors know, the head coaching staff knows, but us as fans, well, you might know because you're in the locker room, but.
I mean, he
I don't know, man. Like,
moves normally when he's not bad. But I mean, yeah, you're right. Who knows?
Who knows? When moving normally while walking and then playing an elite defensive end, on a Sunday, there's two very different things. Walking in and out of the locker room, it's two very different things. So I wouldn't. It's so tough, and like we have to know that there's going to be some development time that's needed for Swanson and Lucas. But the offensive line, we just have to get that fixed, and the defensive line, I think, and we have to move from there.
You have at least 3 players to move forward with on the offensive line, at least.
Seemingly, well, you hope so.
You mean, Tomlinson is
They
fine.
should be.
He's struggled in moments, but like he's also had his good moments, and he's learning. And Warford is obviously capable of being very good, and Riley Reef is a player that you can work with. Definitely you can. I think the jury's still out on Swanson a bit. I mean, centers aren't ever great one-on-one blockers.
No, never almost.
But as I think the Lions put him on an island a little bit too much, so that might not be him. So who knows? And I think that you've seen nothing at a right tackle where you would expect a new player to have.
No, I would agree with you, but I think that there has to be that kind of asterisk, like, oh, he has that right ankle, high knee, right knee, whatever it is.
If there's not an elite quarterback in the first round, if they don't draft a trench player, it's on
offense or defense.
Either one
of the two.
Either
it has to be a defensive tackle, I think, or an offensive tackle.
A defensive end would be acceptable too.
I think, yeah, maybe.
I mean,
and free agency plays a big part too, but
Can we live with this coaching staff?
no. People have to go, I think.
There has to be.
We're missing still a piece, and
I know we were talking. Wisenhunt got fired. Would you, if you were the general manager again, would you bring him in as a head coach, or would you want him as potentially an offensive coordinator for a new head coach?
I mean, I don't think that you can force an offensive coordinator on a coach, but I would welcome him as an offensive coordinator if the coach so decided they.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like you, but would that be like your vision that you would like to talk to your next head coach and say, we would love for, what do you feel about Ken Wisenhunt? Would you bring Ken Wisenhunt in as offensive coordinator?
I think that he would do wonders.
Just hire Peyton Manning.
Do you think it's realistic, though, considering he did kind of shut us down to go to Tennessee and now look at the position he's in?
I mean, it's way too early to say, and there'll be other teams that need offense. I mean, think about a team like Indianapolis that might need a new coaching staff and offensive coordinator.
And certainly Andrew Luck is a little bit sexier than stuff.
So we'll see what happens.
But he took the less sexy pick this time with an unknown.
Maybe he might not want to make that mistake again.
Maybe he's kind of a type of guy who likes a challenge. Maybe we can play to his Call of Duty. Maybe say, let's see if you can help a guy who was once pretty good become great. Maybe that will kind of spring him. And
so we're kind of in agreement that probably the coaching staff's not. Do you realistically see Caldwell finishing the season, or do you think he's going to be on the outs and then like Martin Mayo's going to drop the bomb, try to save his own job potentially? Or would you rather see, like, I personally feel like I would like for them to fire Martin Mayo and Tom Luan, start new in the front office, let Caldwell stay there till the end of the season, and then get the new GM to replace him, whoever the new GM may be.
I think the new GM would probably want a new coaching staff.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, probably.
And that's what I feel. I feel let him finish the season. This season's a write-off. Right now.
I don't think there's any sort of clarity into Caldwell's future at all. I mean, if he got fired today, we couldn't really. What can I say?
Would you promote Terrell Austin? Do you feel Terrell Austin could coach this team on an interim basis till the end of the year?
I don't think he's mature enough, and I think as soon as you put a guy who the team doesn't look good and the defense is included. So if you put a guy interim on a guy,
Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid,
who's also players, and like if you're just looking at the numbers and everything, like the defense really isn't producing. So it's interim to begin with, so you don't. It's basically like saying we don't really want you. and then your defense isn't playing good.
Yeah, you look
It's
at
like
it that way. Though.
so many negatives that if you're sitting in an office and your job is dependent on this guy, you're probably not bringing him.
But what about a guy like Dan Carpenter who came into Miami as interim with that label, and he's kind of turned around Miami?
Oh, I mean,
No, but he did. You know what I mean? They started 0-3. He brought out the team's defense started to play for him. Now, who's to say that couldn't potentially happen?
Definitely, interim
Terrell
coaches
Austin as well, too.
can get the permanent position at the end of the season. It's not like it happens.
I honestly I can't foresee how this organization is going to save face with keeping any of these guys. I think they're all probably going to be gone by the end of the year. I think we all agree that this season is a write-off.
It's very pessimistic at this point. It's hard to kind of picture this group winning.
you can't. So you can't fire. I mean, if you keep getting blown out, I guess what difference does it make? But you can't fire your head coach after you've already fired three off. Because I mean,
it's not going to happen.
You can't bring in new coaches, so you're just too short.
No, exactly, and that's why I'm saying, I'm asking the Terrell Austin question only because we kind of touched on it earlier, but more so, I personally feel you fire your front office staff, and then maybe even let Brian Zanders take over on an interim basis. Right now, he's probably the one that has the most, I think
of the front office
most experience, but also in terms of he's been there the least amount of time, so he hasn't been tarnished by the millionaire or by the Lions. Maybe he hasn't been lionized.
I think if the front office goes, there won't be any coaches coming back.
No, and neither do I. I honestly don't think any of the coaches will be
Austin
coming back.
will be coming back either. Even though I think I kind of like him, but
probably not. I mean, I would if I was Martha Firestone Ford. I would. I would fire Mayhew and shake his hand at the door and say thank you for helping us get to this point.
We got better because of you.
Yeah,
we were in a much darker place, but we want to reach a
and
much
he should
lighter
appreciate
place.
something like that because he did the same thing to Jim Schwartz.
Yep.
Jim Schwartz, thank you. You got us this point, but we're not going to get over the hump with you.
100%.
You know what I mean? We wish you the best. And Jim Caldwell, hi, we tried it. You got us to 11-5. You're just not what we need, and we need to go forward. And it's business. And I think we have to look at it as business, and we spoke on that. The same as Calvin. We love him. I love him to death. You know what I mean? If he goes somewhere else eventually, he's going to be a Detroit Lion in our hearts forever. Just like Jerry Rice had to play multiple teams after he left San Francisco. But when you think of Jerry Rice, you don't say, oh yeah, Oakland Raiders, Jerry Rice. No, San Francisco 49ers.
Went to the Super Bowl with them too, didn't you?
Yeah.
No, exactly. But you still don't think about that.
No,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'd see Calvin Johnson in 5 to 10 years or whenever he's retired, being that Barry Sanders guy. That's Barry Sanders left the team for a long time, and he's brought back. He's a liaison for this.
If we could bring in, I know that he probably won't, but it would be great to have John Gruden. I think.
No.
But do you want a guy who's been so far removed from?
Yeah,
the
because
NFL?
I would think Black Howard. Or Tony Dungy. But Tony Dungy won't come.
won't.
But both of those guys are defensive.
But I would take him, though.
Both of those guys are defensive, though. The reason why I say Gruden is he's kind of like the on the outside of the NFL, he's like the go-to quarterbacks guys.
He was a disaster the last 4 or 5 years he was a coach, though.
Yeah, but I don't know.
He got fired for a reason.
Yeah.
Why don't we save this and maybe we can touch on it next week and we can talk about the possibilities, because that's really all we have to talk about.
Who would fantasize about when we're watching NFL Sunday?
Yeah, exactly.
Who would you fantasize? Clearly, you're fantasizing about Bill Cowher. I'd fantasize about Bill Cowher. He's one ugly guy to fantasize about, but
let's leave it on
press conference.
I don't care.
Let's leave it on
a
fantasy note. Anybody who's listening, we'd love to get some feedback at Sustained Pride Podcast on Twitter. We got our Facebook page, SustainedPridePodcast.com. Please give us some feedback. Give us some show topics.
Type it into Google. There's no way you won't be able to find it.
That's exactly it. So
same thing with at Mike Mady. Type it into Google. There's no way you can't find him.
At Lions Report.
Exactly.
At Lions Report.
So you won't find at Mike Mady, but you would find.
Well, if you type
I'm sure if you did type in Mike Mady, you'd find him.
Mike Mady Lions,
you'll
be
be
alright.
But either way, I want to thank you guys for being here. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.